Okay, okay.
Alright, hello, good morning. Welcome to another Sunday lecture about Buddhism for beginners. Hey, well, now that we're here, we can start talking about Buddhism. Today's day is particularly special, right, in Buddhism. It's the Buddha's birthday. And so you will notice there's a lot more people in this temple, right? Because hey, with birthdays, there's parties and celebration, and that's why we're all here, right? We're like celebrating the Buddha's birthday. So, for those of you guys who are brand new, you're like, we're celebrating the Buddha's birthday. Who is the Buddha? That's a good question, right? Isn't that? It's not kind of there. But he was just a normal person. So the question is, why was he so famous? Why are we all here at this temple celebrating his birthday? Like, what's he famous for, right? So that's a question that we'll probably be exploring today. But I just want to recap what we learned last week and what we were discussing last week, right? So last week, we started a conversation about our minds, right? Stuff that goes on in our brains. And I started the conversation off by saying how it's very interesting how we do everything. We do everything for our bodies, right? But very little for our minds. So an example is this. When you're hungry, what do? You feed your body. When you get up, you put on clothing right away, right? And then you also exercise. So where's that food? I know, where's that food, clothing, and exercise for the mind? How often do you say, oh, let me do this for the mind? Probably never. You didn't know it, but your mind also needs food, it also needs exercise, and also needs clothing. The question is, what does that food actually look like? The food is basically this right here, right? I'm trying to feed your mind. So you show up to temple, you listen carefully, trying to teach you guys like little things that make you wiser. And the same way that your body grows as you grow older, your mind should also grow as you grow older. And they call that wisdom, right? Because the more wisdom you have, the smarter you are, the more you can handle life. And I'm gonna tell you like this weird word. It's called this idea of like worldly attachments. And so, like, why train your mind? Like, why study your mind? This is like what the Buddha was talking about. Like, you know, and we're celebrating his birthday because thousands of years ago he figured this out, right? He figured out that like we're always in a constant like state of suffering. And what's the source of that suffering? It's coming from what he calls worldly attachments. Things like being greedy, things like being angry, and things like being ignorant or like not smart. It's basically, those are the things in this world that's constantly trying to basically take the light out of your candle. And I made that analogy last week, right? You guys, like we all are, we're like a candle, except we're a candle in the wind. And so the wind is basically things that are trying to constantly blow out the candle, trying to like take you away, trying to put you into a state where you are constantly angry, ignorant, and filled with greed, right? But keep in mind that the more and more you feed your mind, the less light, first off, the stronger your light is, right? You go from being a candle to becoming a torch. And think about how an enlightened mind can never actually become contaminated with all these negative thoughts, right? So ultimately, the topic of today's conversation is the idea that we need to become masters of our own mind, right? To build like self-awareness and basically keep yourself from evil. If you notice, there's a lot of cases where there are really bad people out there. There's a lot of crime, a lot of, for example, things like school shootings and just like crime, war, all these bad things happening across the world. The question is, why does all these negative things happen to begin with? And it comes down to people and their minds and how they actually lack like this pure mind, right, to begin with. And why is it that they lack that? Well, it's because they're not masters of their own mind, right? And there's a little short parable or story for you to tell you guys about this, right? So back then, in the Yuan dynasty, right, there was a big war, and there was a scholar who was like his other people in the town. They were fleeing from this war, okay? So here you have people from the town, and you also have this scholar, right? Like a guy who's like studying stuff. And so there's a war and they're fleeing, they're running away. So they're running, and then all of a sudden, they come across a fruit garden, a whole bunch of trees with lots of fruits. And then so all these hungry and thirsty people are saying, oh my gosh, there's a fruit garden. It's owned by somebody else, but it doesn't matter because guess what? We're hungry, we're thirsty, we gotta get some fruits. So they started to like, just grab fruits left and right? The scholar, he wasn't a monk or anything, he was just a normal scholar. He didn't do anything while everyone around him was grabbing fruits like crazy because they said they were hungry and thirsty. He just sat underneath the tree. And then a person was like, why don't you grab? How come you're not grabbing the fruits? And the guy's like, well, why are you guys grabbing the fruits? These are not, these fruits and this trees and this garden belongs to somebody else. And the people were like, the owner of this garden probably left already. Like he ran away as well. So, like, you know, it's up for grabs. And the guy replied, just because the owner of the garden isn't there doesn't mean that you can't be a master of your own mind. Because think about what everybody else was doing. They took advantage of the situation. They started stealing fruits, right? Now, if you were very disciplined and you were a master of your own mind, you would say, wait a minute, this is actually somebody else's property. I shouldn't be stealing right now. I shouldn't be taking anything at all, right? So this is the main idea here, like becoming a master of your mind. And so the question is, when you become a master of your mind, what is it that you know? What is it that you understand, right? And it's basically saying, you arrive at what the Buddha was able to arrive at. He arrived at this like pure Buddhist mind. And so, what is that? What is the goal? What are you guys trying to accomplish, right? Well, the first thing is that if you want to arrive at that pure Buddhist mind, you gotta meditate, right? Meditation is when you arrive at this, when you empty your mind, and then you take deep breaths in and out, and then there's nothing else that you're thinking about, right? So you're arriving at this like pure Buddhist mind. One of those like masters, or they call it like monks or masters, say that he makes this like bold statement. He says, all sentient beings are deranged. So when he says all sentient beings, that means he says that everybody who's ever alive is crazy, is like deranged. The question is, why does he make such a crazy, like that's a big and bold statement in itself, right? Everybody here, right, in this audience, elsewhere, in the streets, they're all deranged. Like something's wrong with their minds. And he's like, and he justifies that by saying, a lot of people who are alive, they lose sight of themselves. Why is that? It's because they lose sight of themselves, especially while they're chasing outside objects. And this is like fascinating. How this is like a big deal actually. It's funny. Like at this very point, like this statement right here, they lose sight of themselves while chasing outside objects. Jim Carrey, a famous a famous comedian. He's made lots of movies. He had this really interesting quote, right? Well, he has two interesting quotes, which I kind of want to introduce you to. He says, "We've accepted this eat, work, sleep, entertainment cycle. Think about as part of life, and never actually question the deeper truths of like why are we here." Isn't that fascinating? Think about everybody that you know, or pretty much people in your circle of influence or whatever. What is it that they go through? What is it that they do in their day-to-day lives? They eat, they sleep, they work, and then they have like some form of entertainment, whether it's sports, TV, video games, whatever. And those are like primarily like everything that defines your life, right? And we've pretty much accepted all of this. You guys do that too. Like in place of work, you guys go to school, right? If you're a kid. But like, what else is there for you guys? It feels kind of almost empty in a sense. And we usually never question like why are we here, and we don't feed that part of our minds, right? And so that's like the first interesting quote that Jim Carrey said. The other quote he said is that like all people should know what it's like to be rich and famous, so that they understand that it's actually not the answer. Now you guys know Jim Carrey. This guy's, I mean, I don't know if you know him. He made like, a lot of famous movies like Pet Detective or whatever. Yeah, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber, etc. Maybe he's like a superstar of the 90s. But the point is that like, too many of us chase like outside things without ever paying attention to what's inside of us, right? Without actually ever trying to master like what's in our minds. And that's like the point, the reason why you guys like possibly show up here every Sunday, right? It's like, how do you learn to develop that wisdom and focus and become aware of what's inside your mind at this point? All right, so that's the first thing. Here's the second half of like this lecture or whatever. The question of, well, and this deals again with the mind, right? The idea that perception is reality, and whatever your mind, whatever you think about, becomes your physical reality. It's a powerful idea, and I feel like kids below 10 maybe probably won't understand this, the idea of perceptual reality. How you see the world becomes what you feel and everything else. Like for example, the question that like young kids always question about is, does heaven and hell exist? Right? And if it does exist, where does it exist? I know as young kids, you probably think, oh yeah, heaven's up in the sky, hell's down there below the dirt or whatever. But have you guys ever taken an airplane? And when you fly in the airplane, right, you go through the clouds, you don't actually see heaven. You don't actually see hell. So when you're younger, you think heaven and hell is a physical place. But where is it? Where does heaven and hell actually exist? And if you step back and think about it, it's actually in your minds, right? Heaven and hell does exist in your mind. And they gave like an example of how you can think about this. Let's just say you have a morning routine, right? You wake up, brush your teeth, take a shower, feeling very nice, calm and peaceful. Maybe you're thinking about the world and suffering, maybe how you can help other people. And then, like, you go from one state, and that's the state of your mind, very calm, and all of a sudden hunger hits you because it's really morning and you want breakfast, right? So all of a sudden there's a part of you that gets triggered and you're all of a sudden like hungry. You're like, I want food. And let's just say your mom serves you food, breakfast, but there's only like tofu that she's serving you. Like not your usual like eggs, bacon, cheese, bread, and cereal. She serves you tofu of all the things, right? Because that's, or like last night's leftovers, and you're like, oh, I don't want to eat this. And all of a sudden you get really angry, right? Notice how you go from one state, which is nice, calm, and peaceful, to like really hungry and then really angry, right? And this idea of heaven and hell they all exist in your mind. It's what you are perceiving of this reality that makes it a heaven or a hell, right? And so every day our minds are constantly living and dying in like different realms, right? And so the idea of like studying Buddhism is to actually like calm yourself and free your minds, purifying your minds from all these things, right? To be in a consistently calm state. So you're not necessarily like pursuing worldly desires or thinking about fame or gain or any of that other things, okay? So here's a second like little story, parable about how this idea of heaven and hell like exists in your mind. So once upon a time, there was this general, right, who sought a monk, and he sought like wisdom from the monk, right? So here you have this general from this country, he's seeking wisdom, and he goes to the monk and he's like, hey, he asks him exactly the same question. Where is there heaven and where is there hell, right? And he really wanted to know the answer, and so the monk turns around and asks this general, what is it that you do for work? And the general responds, well, I'm a general, I lead people into battle. And then the monk turns around and starts laughing at him in his face. He's like, you're a general? Like, you're short. And also, you look like a bum. How can you possibly be a general? How can you lead people into war? And then, given this response, the general was so angry. He's like, I came here to seek wisdom from you. Why are you making fun of me? So he takes out his sword and puts it at the neck of the monk, right? And then the monk tells him, look, the heaven of hell is opening up. And then it was only in that moment when the general was made aware of the fact that the anger took over his mind, right? He was so quick to react based on that one little phrase of somebody calling him a bum or somebody calling him short, that like the anger took over him. And he realized he was ashamed of it. And he realized, oh man, I'm not actually a master of my mind, especially when somebody says something like that, that's A. And then, so he like apologized to the monk. He's like, listen, I'm sorry. I just didn't know. Something took over, right? And I'm sure when you guys are getting angry, something always like takes over. But that's what it means to be part of your mind. And then the monk replies, look, do you notice the gates of heaven opening up as well? Because in that very moment, when he gained a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of awareness, all basically he can see the transformation in himself, right? And so that was like a very big learning opportunity for him. Yeah, and so the big takeaway of that like entire story, that lesson, was that like during our lives, like whether we go through heaven or hell, in our minds, it's not determined by other people. I mean, there's other like stimulus that like provokes us, but really, you guys, especially like Buddhist monks, or especially like when you meditate, your mind becomes less taken over by other forces. Okay, there's a famous person his name is Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he wrote this idea. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a choice, and within that choice is your freedom. It sounds very complicated, but here's the deal. If you walk down the street, somebody calls you a name. Somebody says, okay, it's not a you. Or you, and this is like really like what I often talk about, like gang violence. Do you know how gangs get started? Like, or not gangs in general, but gang violence. Like, they're walking down the street, one person looks at them the wrong way, and then they have the need to react. and then one person starts shooting and killing another person, and then they escalate, right? And it becomes dramatic, and then one person starts killing the other, etc., etc., etc. Now, where am I going with this? Viktor Frankl. The second somebody calls you a name, you don't have to react. He says between stimulus and response, there's a space. And within that space is a choice. And if you are able to like really think about that choice and become aware that you have a choice in that matter, then you have a lot of freedom. So this is why actually, a lot of the times we meditate, right? The idea of meditation is to calm your mind and to be less and less reactive to outside stimulation, right? And so this is how we're able to not let the outside world determine how we think and how we perceive the world, okay? So ultimately the idea that perception is reality. All right, so. Okay, last thing. So here's one last like story about just basically our minds. Hopefully, every time I like give this lecture or whatever, it's like disconnected, but it ultimately all connects to one idea of like why you guys are here and what it is, like what's the purpose of being here anyway, right? Alright, so how do you purify the mind, right? And how do you attain like this level of like liberation that's been talked about? So back then, like one of the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha talked about was like, hey, there's going to be suffering, and the source of suffering in our lives is being attached, right? And so this idea is this: when your mind doesn't seek anything, it gains a lot more freedom, right? And so he talks about like, the big idea is to avoid anger, ignorance, and greed, and also like to not be attached to material things, because ultimately those are not the things that like you take to the next life. And there's a very quick story about how like the less you are attached to things, the more peace you're able to attain, okay? And so here's this final quick story about this man who's really, really wealthy, right? He lived in a mansion. But he was constantly worried about like success, failure, loss, and gain. And there was also this really poor couple living right next to him, illegally, because he lives in a mansion and they just like found a space on their own, right? And so he observes them, right? Day in and day out. Here's their daily schedule. What they do is they work, they go to work, and then after work, they go back home, they play music, they have a good time, and he sees it on their faces. They're like so happy. But here's this guy, he's like, wait a minute, they don't even have money to have a meal, but I have like delicacies. I get to eat the most fancy things from across the world, like sushi or Korean barbecue or whatever. Like he could eat McDonald's whenever he wants, he could eat Burger King whenever he wants. He has that money, he has that freedom, but he's not happy like them, right? And so he's talking to his butler, and his butler suggests, hey, I know a solution to this. These guys, what if we give them $200,000? Let's do an experiment. Let's give them $200,000. That's a lot of money, right? And he's like, is that going to make them more happy or less happy? And the guy's like, that's a lot of money, I don't want to do that. And the butler's like, well, you won't know until you find out. And you would expect, what do you expect when two poor couples get $200,000? Well, at first they were extremely happy. They're like, yes, we're out of poverty, we can actually buy things. But then they realized something. They realized, oh man, $200,000 is a lot of money. And they started to worry. They're like, we have a house with no lock on it. How can we safeguard this money? So they started to think, well, if I put the money in the closet, the rats are gonna eat it. If I put the money in the roof, somebody's gonna steal it. So there's no place to put the money. And they're constantly going back and forth thinking about the money. And so the next day, they show up to the guy, the rich guy, the mansion's house, and they ring the doorbell. They said to him, "Here, we don't want your money. Take it back. You were fooling us, because we're giving you back your worries." And it's a really interesting story, because like the exact opposite happened, right? You would expect that people who got a lot of money automatically would be like worry-free. But it was quite the opposite. It made them more worried. And so the big idea is this, right? When you're not pursuing anything, when you're not trying to hold on to things and be attached to things, you have a lot more peace. And that's what these two couples have. Like, whereas the guy with a lot of money, all he thought about was successes and how much money he was gaining and losing. And ultimately, that's the thing that was like stressing him out. So that's one way for you to like honestly purify your mind. When you arrive at this idea that, oh yeah, I really don't need to be greedy. I don't need to like acquire wealth and fame and all those gains in the world, right? I can just be exactly happy where I am right now. And so that's pretty much like how you become a master of your own mind. You recognize and you become aware, like, oh, all these things that's tempting me are not actually things that will make me feel that way. Okay? And that's the conclusion of today's lecture on mastering your mind. Thanks. Any questions?